strong, those who seek to divide us will grow stronger. It is our job as a Labour government to unite where there is division. So we must now build an asylum system for the world as it is, one that restores order and control, one that opens safe and legal routes to those fleeing danger across the world, and one that sustains our commitment to providing refuge for this generation and those to come. I know the country we are. We are open, tolerant, and generous. We are the Greater Britain that those on this side of the House believe in, not the littler England that some would wish we would become. These reforms are designed to bring unity where others seek to divide. Madam Deputy Speaker, I commend this statement to the House.
Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I thank the Home Secretary for advance sight of her statement, most of which I read in the Sunday Telegraph, actually. But I am pleased that she is bringing forward measures to crack down on illegal immigration. It's not enough, but it is a start, and it's also a change. It's a change from her previous position in opposition of a general amnesty for illegal migrants. But I do want to praise the new Home Secretary, Madam Deputy Speaker. She's bringing fresh energy and a clearer focus to this problem, and she has got more done in 70 days in the job than her predecessor did in a year. She seems to get what many on the benches behind refuse to accept. She is right to say that if we fail to deal with the crisis, we will draw more people to a path that starts with anger and ends in hatred. But we will also allow our English Channel to operate as an open route into this country for anyone prepared to risk their lives and pay criminal gangs. This is not fair. It is not fair on British citizens, it is not fair on those who come here legally, and it is not fair on those in genuine need who are pushed to the back of the queue because the system is overwhelmed. Anyone who cannot see by now that simply tinkering with the current system isn't going to fix this problem is either living in la-la land or being willfully obstructive. It is a shame that it has taken Labour a year in office to realise there is a borders crisis. Yes. I don't know why they're chuntering. What was their first act in government? Her predecessor's first act was to scrap the Rwanda plan, which was already, yes, they're cheering, it was already starting to act as a deterrent before it even got off the ground. And before it started, Labour threw away all of our hard work, the taxpayers' money. They're the ones who have wasted their money, not us. But this statement, Madam Deputy Speaker, is an admission that her predecessor's immigration and borders bill will not work. But I'm glad to see them now changing course. The powers they're using in this bill, they all voted down when we were in government. They wouldn't be able to do that if we hadn't got it through. None of them know the work that was done. They're just cheering nonsensically, but we know what has happened since they came into office. In fact, the Home Secretary will know that in the 70 days that she has been in office, 10,000 people have crossed the Channel. And in the last year, we have seen record levels of asylum claims. The problem has got worse since Labour came into office and is getting even worse by the day. But I am afraid to tell her that what she is announcing is not going to work on its own. And some of these measures will, in fact, take us backwards. I say that to her with no ill will, and I hope she believes me when I say I genuinely want her to succeed. Because on this side of the House, we are speaking from experience. We know how difficult this is. It is, we are. And we're not going to take any lectures from the people who voted down every single measure to control immigration. Some of the measures she is announcing today, Madam Deputy Speaker, are undoubtedly positive steps. Baby steps, but positive nonetheless. We welcome making refugee status temporary, and we welcome removing the last Labour government's legislation that created a duty to support asylum seekers. She's right to do that. Yeah. However, some of what she is announcing simply does not go far enough. On this side of the House, we believe that anyone who arrives illegally, especially from safe countries, should be deported and banned from claiming asylum. Does the Home Secretary agree that anyone who comes to this country illegally should be deported? I'd like to know, I think the country would like to know, because this announcement means that some people who arrive will be allowed to stay. They just need to wait 20 years before getting permanent settlement. That does not remove the pull factor. But the main problem is that for as long as the UK is in the ECHR, illegal immigrants and those exploiting our system will use human rights laws to block anything she does to solve this. I know this because I saw it happen again and again over the last 4 years. I know she is seeing it too. We even saw it this year with the Prime Minister's one-in, one-out scheme, which has seen people return to France come back yet again on small boats. I can guarantee that her plan to reinterpret Article 8 will not work. We tried this already. Strasbourg and UK case law will prevail. And I agree with her that the definition of degrading treatment is overinterpreted. But renegotiating Article 3 internationally will take years. Years we don't have, if it were even possible, but the fact is it isn't. We know this because a small group of EU countries tried this earlier and they were dismissed by the Secretary-General of the Council of Europe. Her government did nothing to support them, so I'm not convinced that it's the Prime Minister's negotiating skills that are going to sort out that problem. The fact is, we have looked at this issue from every possible direction, and the reality is that any plan that doesn't include leaving the ECHR as a necessary step is wasting time we don't have. Just like their plan to smash the gangs or the one-in, one-out policy, it is time-wasting and it is doomed to fail because of lawfare. We have seen this all before. The tough measures will be challenged in the courts and blocked, the new legal routes she's talking about will be exploited, and the numbers arriving on our shores and disappearing into the black economy will keep on rising. If the Home Secretary is serious about reducing these numbers, and I do believe that she is, she must be bolder. She must take steps to deter illegal immigrants from coming to Britain and deport them as soon as they arrive. Our borders plan does just that, and I know that she has studied it in detail. I've seen the looks. I know that she knows that we would leave the ECHR and ECAT to stop the Strasbourg courts from frustrating deportations, that we'd establish a new removals force to make sure all illegal arrivals are deported. We would end the use of immigration tribunals, judicial review, and legal aid in immigration cases. Those are the things that are slowing us down. And we will sign returns agreements that are backed by visa sanctions to ensure we send illegal arrivals back to their place of origin. I welcome what she's talking about on Angola and Namibia, but all of us in this House know that they are not the ones creating the biggest problems. We need to be bold, serious, and unafraid to do what the British people demand: secure our borders. That is what is in our borders plan. So I urge her to take me up on my offer to work together, not just because we have some ideas she might find useful, but because, judging by her own backbenchers' reaction today, she may find our votes come in handy. Earlier this year, we saw what happened when the government tried to make changes to the welfare bill. The Prime Minister was defeated by his own backbenchers and ended up passing legislation guaranteeing that more money would be spent on welfare. And it doesn't appear that his grip on the party has improved since then. So you can be sure that the MPs behind the Home Secretary are already plotting to block any serious changes she tries to make. We can help her with that. Why are they shaking their heads? We've seen them do it time and time again before. I would say to the Home Secretary, this is a genuine offer in the national interest. We will not play the same game they did, voting things down for no reason, but she must be clear with the House on these questions. How many people will be able to take advantage of the new work and study visa route? And what will the level of the cap be? Will it be 10,000 people? Will it be 100,000 people? The government has separately confirmed they will allow Gazan students to bring dependents. We oppose this, but can she clarify how the government will ensure that people brought to the UK from a territory under Hamas control are not a risk to our security? If she finds that the Human Rights Act and ECHR prevent her from enacting these proposals, will she use primary legislation to resolve this? Has Lord Hermer agreed? By her own admission 3 weeks ago, the Home Office is not yet fit for purpose, so why then are we creating the new legal routes for the Home Office to run? And will she take me up on this serious, genuine offer to meet and discuss how we can work together to resolve this asylum crisis, yes or no? I urge her to put party politics aside, meet with me and my Shadow Home Secretary. Let's find a way to work together.
Order. I was very generous with time then. Home Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Leader of the Opposition for her response to the statement. I see that the Shadow Home Secretary has been subbed out after his performance at Home Office orals. But whether it's the Shadow Home Secretary or the Leader of the Opposition herself, I'm very happy to take on the Conservative Party any day of the week. And let me start by saying we will not be taking any lessons from those opposite on how to run an effective migration system or indeed an asylum system, because I'm afraid to say to the Leader of the Opposition, she knows that her party in government gave up on governing altogether. They gave up on making asylum decisions, creating the huge backlog that it was left to this government to start to deal with. And in our first 18 months in office, removals are up 23% compared to their last 18 months in office. So I will take no lessons from anyone opposite on anything to do with our asylum system, because they simply gave up and went for an expensive gimmick that cost 700 million quid, returned 4 volunteers and was doomed to failure from the start. I will also say, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition had rather a lot to say about the European Convention on Human Rights. I don't recall the members opposite ever bringing forward any legislation to deal with the application of Article 8, the qualified right to a private life, in this House. There was never a bill that sought to clarify the way that Article 8 should apply in our domestic legislation or indeed in our immigration rules. So I'm not going to take any lessons from the people that just never bothered to do that in the first place. It is this government that is rolling up our sleeves, dealing with the detailed, substantive issues that we face and thinking of proper, workable solutions to those matters. And I just say on Article 3, I think the position on Article 3 has changed across Europe. I was over at the Council of Europe in my previous role as Lord Chancellor just before the summer recess earlier on this year, and I was struck by the sheer range of other European partners who want to have this conversation. It is important, I think, that the British government leans into that conversation and seeks to work in collaboration with our European partners. The one thing that will not work is simply saying we're going to come out of the European Convention altogether. That is not and will never be the policy of this government, because we believe reform can be pursued, but that this is an important convention, not least because it actually underpins some of our own returns agreements, including the one with France. And so she talks about how many years it would take for us to think about reform of the convention, but it would also take just as many years, as she well knows, to start renegotiating lots of international agreements which would be affected by us coming out of the convention. So I'm afraid her solution once again will not work. And if she wanted to work together in the national interest, and look, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm always up for working in the national interest, because nothing actually matters more to me than holding our own country together and uniting our country. But they could have started by voting for the Borders Bill, which is currently going through the House and which they have voted against at every opportunity. So forgive me if I don't take this newfound conversion to working together in the national interest with much seriousness, because their own track record suggests it should not be taken seriously. And not be taken seriously, Madam Deputy Speaker, sums up the position of the Conservative Party. These are the people that left this government an abject mess to clear up. They gave up on governing. They gave up on running an effective asylum system. And now they turn up without so much as an apology to the British public, thinking that they've got anything to say that anyone wants to hear.
Before I call the first backbench contribution, can I remind members that in order to expect to be called in a statement, they should have been here from the start of the Home Secretary's statement. There may be members bobbing quite unnecessarily. Florence Eshalomi.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, the reality is we need an asylum and immigration system based on fairness and consistency. My constituency of Vauxhall and Campbell Green is a testament to this. It's a place that's been made richer because of the people who've come here from all over the world. Some of them have fled persecution and have made a home over many years. I meet these people every week in the community and including in schools, where I see those children excited about their future. When this government came into office last year, they were right to say that their priority in this area is to tackle the huge backlog of unprocessed asylum claims left by their predecessor. Clearing that backlog is a big task, Madam Deputy Speaker, but it is right that we identify who has a right to be here. But by introducing more assessments of those who've been here for many years, making new judgments on safety of a country will take considerable resources. So is the Home Secretary confident that these changes will not have an unintentional consequence and actually make it harder to achieve her goal?
I thank my honourable friend for her question. Let me assure her there will be both the administrative system and the resources needed to underpin the asylum changes that we are making. It is already the case that at the end of the 5-year leave to remain period, there is meant to be an assessment as to whether the country of origin remains a safe country or not. What has ended up happening, though, in practice is that has become an almost effectively an automatic pathway to permanent settlement. That is the thing that we are changing. But what I would ask her to do is look carefully at our protection work and study route, because we will be encouraging those who have sought asylum here, being granted refugee status, to go into work or to study that supports their integration, but it also means that they are making a contribution which actually will retain public support for the system overall.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is right that the government is looking for ways to bring order to the asylum system. It was left in total disarray by the Conservatives. Sadly, the government has been too slow to act. Britain has a long and proud history of responding with compassion to people fleeing unimaginable horrors. That should continue in a way that is fair and sustainable. So we welcome some of what the Home Secretary has said on that score. But what is not helpful is the Home Secretary claiming that the country is being torn apart by immigration. Acknowledging the challenges facing our nation is one thing, but stoking division by using immoderate language is quite another. I will, however, welcome news about safe and legal routes. This is something the Liberal Democrats have called for some time, since they were scrapped by the Conservatives, leading to more small boat crossings. But we do have some concerns about the far-reaching detail behind these proposals, which seems to be missing. The Home Secretary is revoking the legal duty to provide asylum seekers with accommodation and says asylum seekers should support themselves and contribute to our society. But she is still banning them from working so they can support themselves, contributing to our society. That makes no sense at all. She relies a lot on Denmark as an example. Denmark lets asylum seekers work after 6 months. So will she. And can she guarantee that the burden to house asylum seekers won't fall on already struggling local councils? And can she guarantee that we won't see a whole-scale transfer of asylum seekers from hotels to the streets? And if the Minister for Border Security and Asylum announced to the media asylum seekers could have jewellery confiscated, is the Home Secretary doing this to raise money or to deter people? And either way, does she acknowledge that many British people will see it as unnecessary and cruel? State-sponsored robbery will certainly not fix a system that costs taxpayers £6 million every day in hotel bills. If the government plans to keep its promise to end hotel use, it must also process the claims of the 90,000 backlog of asylum seekers, something the Liberal Democrats have a plan to do within 6 months using Nightingale-style processing centres. Does the Home Secretary seriously believe that an overstretched Home Office, which has yet to clear the existing backlog, can also undertake reviews of every refugee status every 2.5 years? The UK must continue to lead international efforts to manage large migratory flows, and because the flow of people comes from Europe, she will need to work with the EU on a solution. The Oxford Migration Observatory has identified a clear Brexit effect. That means people refused asylum in the EU now make a second attempt here, a consequence of the Brexit delivered by the Conservatives and the honourable member for Clacton 2. The Minister refused to answer earlier whether Brexit has harmed our immigration and asylum system. So I'll ask the Home Secretary now, does she think that Brexit has made it easier or more difficult for this country to control its borders and asylum system? And does she think reductions in overseas development spending will reduce or increase migratory flows? We have already made it very clear that we think leaving the ECHR will make no difference to securing our borders and will tear hard-won rights away from British people. It's encouraging that the Home Secretary has said that is not part of the government's plan. Finally, we urge the government to tread carefully, to act with fairness, to act with efficiency, and to act with compassion for local communities in the UK who want this resolved, but also for asylum seekers too.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I have to say to the honourable gentleman, I wish I had the privilege of walking around this country and not seeing the division that the issue of migration and asylum system is creating across this country. Unlike him, unfortunately, I am the one that is regularly called a fucking packy and told to go back home. It is I who knows through my personal experience and that of my constituents just how divisive the issue of asylum has become in our country. And I do say to him, I wish it were possible to say that there isn't a problem here, that there's nothing to see and that it is all, in fact, just extremist, right-wing talking points. But this system is broken and it is incumbent on all members of Parliament to acknowledge how badly broken the system is and to make it a moral mission to fix this system so that it stops creating the division that we all see. And I do say to him, I do not think it is acceptable or appropriate for people in this place to not acknowledge the real experience of those who sit outside of this House. We are supposed to be in here to reflect that experience in this House, and I hope that he will approach the debates that we will no doubt have on all of these measures in that spirit. He also accused this government of being too slow to act. I do have to say to him, removals of those who have no right to be in our country are up by 23% in the first 18 months of this Labour government compared to the last 18 months of that former Tory government. That is a government that is getting on with the job. We have made 11,000 enforcement raids, 8,000 arrests, and over 1,000 people with no right to be in this country as a result of those raids have been removed from this country. This is a government that has been getting on with the job, and this is just the next phase of our work as we deal with the broken migration system that we inherited from those opposite. He said that he thought that whilst people who are waiting on their claim should be given the right to work, I think he knows that will be a huge pull factor and increase the number of channel crossings rather than decrease them. That would be our experience in this country. That is why we are not pursuing that policy. But what we have said is for those who are granted refugee status in this country and who can and want to, they will be able to switch into the protection, work and study route so they can start contributing to society. That will help them to integrate and it will help the communities that they are living in as well. He knows full well that it is not the policy of this government to confiscate jewellery from those who are accessing asylum accommodation. What I would say to him, though, is asylum accommodation is provided to asylum seekers by British taxpayers, and it is right that if people have high-value assets, that they contribute to the cost of that asylum accommodation. I gave in my speech the example of a man who was in supported asylum accommodation paid for by his taxpayers and by mine, who was receiving £800 a month from his family and who had enough money to acquire himself an Audi. I think it is right that the British state should be able to say to such an individual, contribute. We're not saying that we would take everything away and leave that individual destitute, but I think contribution is a fair principle here. And I would be very disappointed to discover that the Liberal Democrats do not support contribution when people can afford to do so to the cost of their asylum accommodation. And Madam Deputy Speaker, he left his remarks on Brexit. I don't have any more to say about that. I'm living in the world as it is today. If he has things to say, I'm sure the House will continue to hear about them.
The Home Secretary should know that language that is not acceptable in this House does not become acceptable if it is attributed to others. She might like to apologise for the language used.
I apologise, Madam Deputy Speaker. I did not mean any discourtesy. I was merely reflecting the truth of words that are used to me.
And I think we all appreciate that. But please, can I urge members to keep their language acceptable in the House? Graham Stringer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I start by saying I fully support the Home Secretary in a statement today. It is a fundamental duty of government to protect our borders and to know who is coming into this country, which we have not known for some time. She has set herself a difficult task, but will she agree to publish targets for all the areas she has outlined in her statement today, particularly a reduction in the number of undocumented and illegal entrance to the country, so that we can check whether it is working, and she may need to alter some of the policies if it is not working.
Thank my honourable friend for his question. What we won't do is set arbitrary targets or caps. We have learnt the lessons of previous governments, and I think that setting a number in that way actually costs public confidence. The better thing to do is to actually get on with delivering these reforms, passing the necessary legislation in this House, delivering them out there in the country, and then assessing them as they go. I have no doubt that there will be much debate and scrutiny in this place and in others about the success of these reforms, and I look forward to answering those questions over the coming months and years, no doubt.
Chair of the Home Affairs Committee, Dame Karen Bradley.
Madam Deputy Speaker. My committee, I'm sure, will want to look closely at the very significant number of announcements that the Home Secretary has made today. But she has referred on a number of occasions to asylum seekers contributing to the support that they're given. And I wonder whether she has made any consideration of setting up a deferred payment scheme much akin to the student loan scheme, so that people, when they are granted asylum and are in work, can start to pay back for the generosity they've received.
I thank the Chair of the Home Affairs Select Committee, and I do very much look forward to my first appearance before her committee, which I hope we can arrange very soon, and I'm sure we will be discussing in detail all of these proposals as well as other matters relating to the Home Office. Let me say on that specific point around further contribution, it is something that we are currently exploring. It's not part of the package of measures today, but I'll happily update the House in due course.
Joe White.
Well, thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement? Would the Home Secretary agree with me that enforcing the immigration rules, including removals, is in the public interest? Could the Home Secretary provide greater detail on the action the government will take to balance public interest against individual rights?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question. We will bring forward legislation in the next session on the specific ways in which we will deal with the application of Article 8 to immigration cases, and also how we will update our immigration rules as well. I'm happy to discuss with her how that legislation will be developed over the coming weeks, but the intention is to do exactly as I said in my statement, in particular to define what is a family, to define how the public interest test is used so that it is only used in the most exceptional of circumstances, and to tighten the who and the why, the who and the where of how Article 8 claims can be made. Taken together, we believe that that will ensure that we are able to ensure that the application of Article 8 is exactly as it was intended to be when the European Convention on Human Rights was first agreed to.
Father of the House, Sir Edward Lee.
On these benches, we generally wish her well, because otherwise the country, in her own words, will start falling apart. So it's a good effort, 7 out of 10. She clearly has strong conservative instincts. But does she fear that such is the misery in many of these countries that they're not really worried about how long they have to wait for their asylum claim to be processed? And does she fear that unless we do arrest and detain and deport people very quickly, then this problem will just go on and on and on? So she mentioned return hubs. Could you say a bit more about that? And could you have an open mind about schemes such as Rwanda?
On Rwanda, no. I think on the substance of what he says, he can't be right, because claims are down in Europe and up here. So what I would say to him instead is I hope that he will approach the debate that we're having with an open mind, ditch the failed policies of his party, and maybe consider more workable solutions from this side of the House instead.
Lewis Atkinson.
To continue the UK's proud history of offering sanctuary while simultaneously reducing illegal channel crossings, the right way for refugees fleeing persecution should be through safe and legal routes that are subject to full security checks and controls, not by paying people smuggling gangs to cross the channel in an uncontrolled and unsafe way. So can I therefore welcome the Home Secretary's announcement that such routes will be created? And can she tell the House how quickly she envisages these will be implemented?
I thank my honourable friend. Safe and legal routes are absolutely the way that we should be seeking to bring people into our country, and not through the people smuggling route in the north of France and over the Channel. And it is an explicit policy choice that I have made to disincentivise people coming through that route and paying thousands of pounds as they do so to organised immigration criminals, and will privilege those who come through our safe and legal routes. As we get order and control into the system that we have inherited, these safe and legal routes will become more generous over time. They will start modest, the numbers will be in the low hundreds, but they will grow, and we want them to grow because we want people fleeing sanctuary to be able to find safe harbour here in this country. And we make we are absolutely proud of that position as a government. This route will grow over time. I hope people across the House will support that, but I think we have to get order and control into our system first.
Christine Jodin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I think there would be general agreement that we have chaos in the immigration and asylum system, and that the government should be looking for new ways to discourage people from crossing the Channel in small boats. But in what she says today, is there a danger that those people that we do actually need to come to this country legally, with the skills that we need to fill the employment gap, to keep our NHS working and to work in the social care sector, will actually look at this country now and say, no, I don't want to go there, and that there is a danger in this policy that that will happen?
I disagree with the honourable lady. There is no reason to believe that. What I would say to her is that if you look at the numbers of people that come into this country on the small boats, it's about 40% of all asylum claims. Actually, it's about the same number of people who come through a legal route, a visit visa, a work visa or a study visa, which when that visa comes to an end, apply for asylum. I hope she would recognise that it is important that we stop that abuse of the asylum system so that we can retain public confidence in the legal migration system that I think we can all agree that this country needs.
Chris Murray.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I now draw your attention to my declaration of interest. Over the last few years, 3 times as many people fleeing war or persecution have come to this country from Ukraine and Hong Kong as have come in small boats, but there has been no public outcry. The lesson here is the British people are compassionate and generous to refugees when the system is controlled, fair and gripped by the government. In 15 years working on asylum issues before being elected, I saw the dysfunction this government has inherited. There is nothing progressive about ducking asylum reform and allowing public support for refugees to drain away. Can the Home Secretary set out how these reforms will address the manifest unfairnesses and rebuild public support for the asylum system and immigration overall?
My honourable friend makes a very powerful point. This country is an open, tolerant and generous place, but there are conditions for that openness, for that tolerance and for that generosity, and they are that there is order and control in the system. And when people can see a system that is not working, where rules are being abused and not enforced, they do rightly feel angry, and it is important that this government deals with those problems so that we can have public consent for not just a new system that works better, but also for the safe and legal routes that I know he and others in this House will want to see. The 2 principles that underpin all of the reforms that I am making today are fairness and contribution. They are quintessential Labour values, but they are also quintessential British values too.
Sir Desmond Swing.
As she struggles to find these hubs, she should reflect on the fact that it was her government that wasted the 700 million by giving up the opportunity to Germany and the United States before we got the chance to use it.
Apologies, Madam Deputy Speaker. In all the finger wagging, I sort of missed the question. But I think it was something about Rwanda, which I think we can all agree was a totally failed scheme and a waste of money. There are good ongoing negotiations going in relation to return hubs. I very much hope we can update the House in due course.
Sarah Owen.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I hope that we could all agree that a strong immigration system doesn't have to be a cruel one. When the Tories painted over murals for refugee children, the numbers of small boat crossings still went up. When they threatened deportations to Rwanda, guess what? The crossings still went up. So what evidence does the Secretary of State have that taking personal belongings, such as jewellery from refugees, and selling it off actually works as a deterrent? Isn't a focus on the new plans outlined on the safe and legal routes a much better use of all of our time?
I say to my honourable friend, we are not taking jewellery at the border. I can't say it any more clearly than that. She will know that the example I have used in my speech, and the sort of case we're going after, is those who have assets, those who have access to money and who can afford quite expensive cars, who should make a contribution to the cost of what is currently free asylum support. These two things are not the same, and I would urge her not to conflate the two. We will not and never will seize people's jewellery at the border. We're not going after their sentimental items like wedding rings and so on. We are talking about those who have high value assets, who receive at the moment, having claimed asylum in this country, so before they've been granted refugee status, they've claimed asylum, they receive free accommodation on the state. If they have assets, they should contribute to the cost of that accommodation, just as I explained in the example I used in my speech. That is the sort of case we are talking about, and I do hope that she will not perpetuate what is being said about jewellery, because I have ruled that out clearly in this House today.
Sir Ashley Fox.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Home Secretary for her statement? Labour's change, of course, is most welcome, and she's outlined some useful steps today. Now, my constituents want to see the Holiday Inn in Bridgewater emptied of migrants and returned to commercial use. And to achieve that, the Home Secretary is going to have to be bolder. So does she agree with me that anyone who arrives in this country illegally should be detained on entry and deported automatically?
Again, forgive me, but I'm not going to take any lessons from the party that gave us hotel use in the first place, now lecturing me about hotel exit. It is a manifesto commitment of this government that we will get out of hotels by the end of this Parliament. I hope to do so before then. That is why we are exploring large sites, including military sites. I know that will engage more debate in this House over the coming weeks and months, and I look forward to that. But given that he's a member of a party that started hotel use, I hope he'll reflect on that first.
Daniel Zeitner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I support my right honourable friend's statement, and particularly her announcement about safe and legal routes. She'll know that cities like Cambridge have a long tradition going back to the kinder transport to welcoming people from Syria and Ukraine. And I very much hope she'll work closely with authorities like Cambridge City Council to work on measures that can make these routes work.
I thank my honourable friend. We absolutely will work with local partners, councils, philanthropists, other charitable organisations as we develop these safe and legal routes. And as I said in my speech earlier, they will take three primary forms: community sponsorship, because we believe that is the best model for achieving integration of refugees into our communities, a route for talented students and for skilled workers as well. We want to play our full part as a country in providing sanctuary to those truly in need. We need to move to a better system. Safe and legal routes will be the way in the future to do it.
Marie Goldman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm sure we can all agree across this House that one of the key aspects of dealing with the asylum system is dealing with the crisis in the backlog, which is absolutely enormous. And the Home Secretary said in her speech that they are looking at a number of large military sites as an alternative to the asylum hotels. One of those large military sites is already in use is RAF Wethersfield in Essex. I understand from Essex Police that Braintree District Council has been given a sum of funding to the tune of about £2 million to help with community cohesion, dealing with the fact that they have that facility nearby. However, buses are taking asylum seekers from Wethersfield to places like Colchester and to my constituency of Chelmsford several times a day, and that is placing extra strain on Essex Police in those areas, yet they are unable to access those funds. Will the Home Secretary commit to providing extra funds to Essex Police in those areas to help them police them?
I think that was two questions. One on the backlog, which I recognise the backlog of appeals is far too high. It is why we're going to create a new independent appeals system so that we can run through these cases more quickly whilst fulfilling our obligations to an independent process and providing early legal advice as well. And on the specific points in relation to Wethersfield and pressures on councils, we do of course work closely with local councils and do provide funding to assist with community cohesion and other issues, and I will look carefully at the example that she has raised if she writes to me.
Derek Twigg.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I say to the Home Secretary that her statement is most welcome. It's certainly a step in the right direction, and certainly the proposals that she set out today are a significant step in the right direction. It's also the case, I think, as well, that the comments she made about the damage to the social fabric of this country are very, very important. But can I ask her a specific question? And that is about asylum seekers who committed crimes and actually are deported, but then allowed to again put a second application in to come back to this country. Will she be looking at law to see how that can be addressed?
What I would say to him on those who are convicted of crimes, the combination of the sentencing bill changes and what I have said today should actually lead to earlier deportation of foreign national offenders in this country. It is of course absolutely important that those individuals face the full force of the law, but we have made a policy decision as a government that for the vast majority of foreign national offenders, the appropriate thing to do is to move to immediate deportation wherever possible.
Sakib Bhatti.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Home Secretary said that she was exploring the possibility of return hubs with negotiations ongoing. Can she tell the House which country she's negotiating with and how much is it going to cost?
No, because he would not expect me, I think, to comment on live negotiations with other countries. But those negotiations are ongoing, and I hope we have announcements to make soon.
Catherine West.
Deputy Speaker, the Hornsey and Friar Barnet constituency has a long tradition of being boroughs of sanctuary, and just today I had an excellent briefing from the Jewish Voice for Refugees Hayas J-Corps. Will she agree with me that currently there is a real problem with the cliff edge for failed asylum seekers who end up street homeless or rough sleeping, particularly in my constituency around the Finsbury Park area? And will she redouble her efforts to understand the connections between homelessness and the asylum process so that all people can have shelter in the current period as we go into the winter?
I thank my honourable friend. I do understand the point that she is making. I mean, I think the reality is that there are a lot of failed asylum seekers within the asylum accommodation system, and I'm sure she would accept and agree that where somebody has a failed claim and no right to be in this country, the best thing to do is to voluntarily leave the country, and we do already provide packages to help people make that decision. I, of course, don't want to see people homeless in this country, but I know she can't possibly think that the answer to that is to essentially have there be no consequence to having a failed asylum claim in the first place. We do need to run a system where the rules are enforced, as uncomfortable as that might occasionally be, but of course recognising that we don't want people in destitution. That is why we do make financial packages available for people to voluntarily remove the country, and that will always be the case.
Pete Wishart.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in their manifesto, Labour promised to defend migrants' rights and build an immigration system based on compassion and dignity. Instead, what we have is a policy that's welcomed by Reform UK and that's even found favour with Tommy Robinson. From throwing refugees into destitution to denying any meaningful route to citizenship to forcible evictions, where exactly is the compassion and dignity in that?
Yeah.
Well, I can assure him that given that Tommy Robinson doesn't even think I'm actually English, he will certainly not be supporting anything I've got to say. So let's just leave that there, I think, Madam Deputy Speaker. We don't need to hear any more about what vile racists have to say about anything whatsoever. And let me also say to him, I guess it's not a surprise to me to find a Scottish National Party Member of Parliament defending a broken status quo. That's what they do in Scotland with the Scottish Government under the SNP every day, and that's what he's doing now. I hope he can agree that good reform, much needed reform to a broken system is the best way to retain public support for having an asylum system at all.
Neil Laura.
Madam Deputy Speaker. And my right honourable friend is absolutely right to seek to bring order to the chaos at our borders, chaos instituted by the Tories, which undermines trust in our state and imposes such costs on communities. She is also right to address the pull factors which lure migrants to their death in our channel of claims of cushy lives in five-star hotels. And she is right to assist that our proposals must reflect British values and work in practice. So on that, could she say a little bit more about how reviewing refugee status every 2 years will work in practice, particularly with regard to the Home Office capacity and also with regard to integration?
I thank my honourable friend for her comments as well as her question. What we are doing in relation to the refugee status is moving from a situation where it's effectively permanent and the most attractive of all routes into the country to a more temporary status. I will make sure that the administration and the funding is available to run the new system as it is being designed. But I do say to her that is why we are also creating the protection, work and study route, because we believe that the best integration outcomes come when people are in work and able to contribute, and that is how we will retain popular support for having an asylum system. So people will transfer, we hope, into the protection, work and study route. But of course, if they do not, under the core protection model, they will still receive sanctuary from this country. It will be more regularly reviewed. I hope we can all agree that where a country is safe for an individual to return to, a return should, in the normal run of things, take place. But of course, if people have switched into a work route and are making a contribution, we will set out plans in the coming days about how they could earn their way to an earlier settlement, longer than what is available to people today, and still longer than what will be available to people on safe and legal routes, but shorter than those who remain on the core protection model.
Nick Timothy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Most on the benches opposite disagree with us. But I share the Home Secretary's admiration for the Danish model. And the Danish Finance Ministry publishes data regularly on the fiscal contribution of different profiles of migrants. This shows in Denmark that migrants from MENAT, the Middle East, North Africa, Pakistan and Turkey are net recipients over the course of their lifetimes. Will the Home Secretary ensure that the Treasury publishes the same data in the same way in this country?
Well, we keep all statistics under review, as he knows, and as was the case, I believe, when he was an advisor to a former Home Secretary. And let me say to him that the principle that underpins all of these reforms is about fairness and contribution. We believe most people want to be able to contribute to this country because the refugees themselves recognise that is the best way for them to have stability and security in their lives, and it is what is needed for the wider community as well. And we think that all refugees, if they're on the protection, work and study route, will have that opportunity. I'm not interested in models that start separating out different nations from one another. Once somebody has got status in our country, they are on a path to becoming one of us if they are working and contributing.
Gary McCarthy.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I agree with the need for a fairer asylum system in which the public can have confidence. But all that she proposes today is predicated on there being decent legal advice available for people. And I know from 20 years as an MP that that is simply not the case. Despite the best efforts of the advice sector in Bristol, which is proud to be a city of sanctuary, there's just a real dearth of decent immigration lawyers. And I see too many constituents that fall into the hands of dodgy lawyers who will help them falsify and fabricate claims. What is she going to do to ensure that that decent legal advice is there?
Well, look, I agree with her in that my own constituency experience as a Member of Parliament is many people have turned up at my advice surgery believing that there are things that I can do as a constituency MP to assist them in their migration claim, which I cannot do, and they have been completely misled and robbed, frankly, by unscrupulous individuals. In the new appeal system that we are going to set up, early legal advice will be available from the start. We believe in access to justice. People need to have the right legal advice, but doing it early and right at the start of claims means that we can run a system where you can have one claim and one appeal rather than the absolute merry-go-round and whack-a-mole of claims that we see today.
Danny Kruger.
Deputy Speaker, I welcome the rhetoric that the Home Secretary has announced. In fact, I recognise the rhetoric of the Home Secretary today. We have our plan for restoring justice. She has announced a plan to restore order and control. But before she puts in her application to join Reform UK, and I very much welcome her doing so, can I just draw out the difference? Can I draw out the difference between our parties? Unlike the government, Madam Deputy Speaker, we don't propose to give illegal immigrants the right to stay here for 2.5 years after arriving. We don't propose to give them the right to study and work here. We don't propose to allow them to bring their families here. And crucially, Madam Deputy Speaker, we're not going to contort our law to comply with, or to fit into the European Convention on Human Rights. The derogations that she announces will not work to stop the lawfare, just as the derogations announced in the Rwanda bill wouldn't have stopped the lawfare, which is why I opposed that bill as well. So she talks about, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm great.
I don't think there was a question in there, Madam Deputy Speaker. As for his invitation to join his party, of whom there appear to be hardly any over there, let me tell him, over my dead body.
Ian Byrne. Thank you very much indeed. I want to commend the Home Secretary for getting the balance absolutely right. And I think the announcement that she has made today will be widely welcomed across our diverse community in Birmingham, because we know that our generosity of spirit is upheld by our rule of law, and the kindness that we show is protected by the justice that we share. So will she confirm that while we will always give sanctuary to those who need our protection, what she's advancing today is in effect a form of earned citizenship, and only those who step up to the full responsibilities of citizenship will enjoy the full rights of citizenship of this country?
Well, my honourable friend makes a very powerful point. We are constituency neighbours, and both of us have done many community meetings over the years where these issues have been discussed, not just by those who are white, but those who are ethnic minority Britons as well. Because I think the thing that unites all Britons, regardless of their background, is a desire for fairness and for a good system that people can have confidence in. And he's absolutely right. The concept of earned citizenship, earned settlement, contribution, fairness. As I said earlier, these are quintessential Labour values. They are quintessential British values as well. And that is why I know this plan will have support from across the country.
Bradley Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. While these steps are definitely a move in the right direction, I'm pleased that the Home Secretary has rejected